comment,
and subscribe for more content.
Where's the notification bell?
It's to the right of you.
Oh.
Ooh, what's up, guys? Welcome to this edition of a Funko Popcast. I am DK Wrestler.
And I am Robbie D.
And in today's fandom-related podcast, yes, it is a fandom-related podcast. It is more specifically titled, You're a Wizard, the Harry Potter Podcast. And I couldn't have asked for a better co-host for today's fandom-related podcast than Robbie D. Yes, as you guys notice, MD Shady is not here, which this is actually the first time in a Funko Popcast history where a fandom-related podcast does not have MD Shady as a co-host, but that's because he had chose to opt out of doing a fandom-related podcast on Harry Potter as he felt he didn't have enough knowledge to essentially do this podcast, which I do have a decent amount of knowledge, but I thought it was perfect to have someone who has more knowledge than probably MD Shady and I put together on this fandom of Harry Potter with Robbie D. And for this podcast today, we are talking about all 7 books / 8 movies. We are going to talk about the Funko Pops involved, not all of them, because there are at least 150 from what I last count, and that would just take hours, and no one wants to sit like 3 hours talking about Harry Potter Pops, even though a Harry Potter movie is generally almost 3 hours long. We will divide this into 7 parts for the 7 books. We'll talk about the Funko Pops involved, and I guess our opinions of each of the movies realistically, which without further ado, we will kick off with the very first book / movie, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, or in the US, it's titled The Sorcerer's Stone, which the book was released June 26, 1997, which is why we are doing this podcast, because it is the 25th anniversary of the book. The movie came out on November 16th, 2001, with a budget of $125 million and the box office at $1.018 billion, making a profit of $893 million, and with a brief plot as provided by a user over on IMDb, which this is going to be how all the rest of the movies are going to be. Harry Potter is an average 11-year-old boy who has lived with the Dursley family ever since his parents died in a car crash. For some reason, the family has always mistreated him. On his 11th birthday, a giant man named Rubeus Hagrid hands him a letter telling him that he has been accepted as a student at the Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Harry learns that his parents were wizards and were killed by the evil wizard Voldemort, a truth that was hidden from him all these years. He embarks for his new life as a student, gathering 2 good friends, Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger, along the way. They soon learn that something very valuable is hidden somewhere inside the school, and Voldemort is very anxious to lay his hands on it, which I guess we'll give a brief opinion on this movie, which I will start first. I thought it was very enjoyable rewatching Philosopher's Stone. Obviously, a great way to kick off a 7-part series, or 8 if you're talking about movies realistically. And if I were to go back once again to watch some Harry Potter films, this would probably be one of them.
Philosopher's Stone is a really good movie, definitely to start off the series with. Whenever Shelby and I have time, my fiance that is, we usually do Harry Potter marathons, so we always love watching every movie. And honestly, overall, the movie is a really good one. So yeah, it's pretty amazing to see that, you know, it's made a decent revenue with the amount that you listed with the box office total. Pretty crazy.
Now we will talk about the pops, which for each of these movies, besides the last 2 books, I should say, or movies, there will be 10 pops listed, which starting off, we got ourselves a Barnes & Noble 3-pack of Harry Potter, Ron Weasley, and Hermione Granger, which I know there were singular pops, but might as well talk about it as one singular pop. Harry Potter with the Philosopher's Stone. Obviously, Harry Potter, he's the boy who lived. Harry is holding the Philosopher's Stone from Professor Quirrell, whose body has been taken over by Lord Voldemort at this point. Ron Weasley with Sorting Hat, Barnes & Noble exclusive. Obviously, Ron Weasley, one of Harry Potter's friends that he meets on the train ride to Hogwarts. And obviously, we thought we'd mention this because of the Sorting Hat, which is the, I guess, mechanism that decides which house you will be a part of when you get accepted into your first year of Hogwarts. Hermione Granger with the Feather, which obviously Hermione, once again, one of Harry Potter's friends that he meets on the train ride to Hogwarts. And this is the scene where Hermione perfects the famously known spell Wingardium Leviosa. The Harry Potter entering platform 9 3/4 pop movie moments, which was a box lunch exclusive. This is the scene where Harry Potter is looking for the platform, but must run through the wall with his cart to get to 9 3/4. Rubius Hagrid, which there are a couple of variants, but specifically, I think the one we're looking at is the one with the umbrella, a giant wizard that stands 11 feet 6 inches tall, according to the Harry Potter Wikipedia page. He often helps Harry Potter in certain situations and helped Harry get settled in at Hogwarts. The Gringotts Bank Pop Deluxe set exclusive to Target, which was part of that new set. And I think it's the only one we're actually talking about from that set. Obviously, a bank in which money was stored in for Harry Potter by his parents before they passed away. Harry Potter and Albus Dumbledore with the Mirror Arise pop movie moments exclusive to Amazon. And the Mirror Arise is a magical mirror that shows the one staring into it what their deepest desire is. Ron Weasley riding chess piece pop movie moments. This is where Ron Weasley does a challenge of playing life-size chess in order for Harry to get to the Philosopher's Stone. And then the last pop discussed here, which we had to divide these into which they would go with the movie, and then certain characters that are throughout the movies will be discussed later on in the podcast. We got ourselves the Professor Quirrell that was in New York Comic Con 2018 and was shared to Barnes and Noble, in which Professor Quirrell was a defense against the dark arts professor at Hogwarts that ends up becoming a temporary Horcrux by Voldemort's spirit. And for this, I thought I might as well let Robbie D discuss about the Funko Pops, and if I have anything to add to it, I will.
Okay, so starting off with the, I'll call it the OG 3-pack, because, you got Ron, Hermione, and of course, Harry Potter. They do have the singular pops, but it makes sense, I guess, to have all three in one box together because they are the three main characters of the series. Moving on to Harry Potter holding the Philosopher's Stone. This would be the scene at the very end of the movie, pretty much, where they had gone past the whole wizard's chest, and like you mentioned, he got the stone from Quirrell. And basically, this is the scene where like Harry touches Quirrell's face and his like body starts to kind of disintegrate and everything. I like this pop a lot. I love the detail of the fact that like Harry looks kind of like, I wouldn't say beat up per se, but like ashy looking because of being around fire and everything. Ron with the sorting hat. I love the sorting hat. I love the whole bickering and bantering between where certain students go. I do like the scene where, Harry, even though this isn't the Harry Potter pop of the character, rather, I love when Harry's like trying to say not Slytherin, and then like the hat goes, not Slytherin, eh? Well, we'll put you in Gryffindor. So like that was a cool moment. I do love the fact that like Ron's a little bit squeamish with the fact that like, he isn't sure where he's going, but the hat puts him in Gryffindor as well. So really nice touch by Funko to make this pop. Moving on to the infamous scene where Hermione has the feather and she's learning Wingardium Leviosa, not Leviosa. Love that part of the movie too. Really good touch by Funko. Do love this pop a lot. Moving on to the scene or the pop where Harry is trying to get through the platform 9 3/4 in between platforms 9 and 10. He runs into the wall. I do love this scene. Hedwig's on top of the cage. Harry's got his little like luggage down at the bottom of his little trolley thing that he has. Really nice pop. Rubius Hagrid. This is one of the OG Hagrid pops I'm looking at right now with the umbrella. Not much I can really say about this pop. It does seem to, be fitting that, they did this pop well with given how tall he is, and they made it look like a realistic size pop for Hagrid. I think this is a really nice pop as well. The Gringotts Bank. Gringotts, also during that scene where Harry is getting money out and stuff from the bank, Hagrid also goes in there to a different vault and gets what, we'll find out later to be the Philosopher's Stone. Funko did pretty well with this pop. I don't think there wasn't much more that they could do with this pop. Moving on to Harry and Professor Dumbledore standing in front of the Mirror of Erised. And of course, you can see his parents there in the background of the mirror. Harry wants nothing more than his parents to be, alive and back with him. I really like this pop. And of course, if I had the opportunity to get this pop in my collection, I definitely would, because this is definitely a great pop that Funko made. Moving on to probably one of my favorite scenes from the movie, and that would be the wizard chess game where Ron is riding the wizard's chess piece. We know the scene too well. For those Harry Potter fanatics, we know that Ron does take a tumble after sacrificing himself so that Harry can move forward. I mean, yeah, I could say I'm a chess player here and there. So, I mean, this kind of relates to me in a way. I think Funko did a pretty good job on this pop. I don't have a lot more to say about this, unfortunately, but, going into detail, they kind of nailed it, honestly. And moving on to the final pop we'll talk about for the Philosopher's Stone or the Sorcerer's Stone, Professor Quirrell with the removable, I guess, turban or whatever, which will show Voldemort's face in the back. I think it's a good touch on Funko for doing this, honestly. Professor Quirrell, one of those kind of like niche characters where he's in there for a little bit and he's kind of been taken under Voldemort's control near the ending. And, they have a really good duel at the end, Harry and Voldemort, to kind of, Harry wants to hold on to the Philosopher's Stone and not let Voldemort get it. This is a great pop overall.
Now we are moving on to Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Book was released on July 2nd, 1998, with the movie releasing on November 15th, 2002. So we're very close to the 20th anniversary of the movie for Chamber of Secrets, with a budget of $100 million and the box office at $879.6 million, giving it a profit of $779.6 million. Forced to spend his summer holidays with his muggle relations, Harry Potter gets a real shock when he gets a surprise visitor, Dobby the house elf, who warns Harry against returning to Hogwarts, for terrible things are going to happen. Harry decides to ignore Dobby's warnings and continues with his prearranged schedule. But at Hogwarts, strange and terrible things are indeed happening. Harry is suddenly hearing mysterious voices from inside the walls. Muggle-born students are being attacked, and a message scrawled on the wall in blood puts everyone on his or her guard. The Chamber of Secrets has been open. Enemies of the hair, beware. I thought Chamber of Secrets, it was not as good as Philosopher's Stone when rewatching it. It has some cool scenes, don't get me wrong, especially the basilisk scene, but I felt as if it was more of Philosopher's Stone Part 2 rather than its own story, but that's just me.
Yeah, like you said, it's had its moments. Honestly, I'm pretty sure that I enjoyed it probably more than you. Did it feel like it was a part 2 to Philosopher's Stone? Maybe a little bit, but overall, I think the movie was a good one for sure. I liked the movie. It was a good one for sure.
Talking about the 10 pops that will be featured for this movie. First off, Dobby, a male house elf who was a servant of Lucius Malfoy until he was given a piece of clothing which set him free. Gilderoy Lockhart, which we have a common version, and we might as well mention about the blue attired version that was a Barnes & Noble exclusive, former student at Hogwarts, and eventually turned into a famous author. He was known for his heroic acts that ended up not even being done by him. Lucius Malfoy, which of course is the father of Draco Malfoy, which we'll talk about when we have a pop of him, I'm pretty sure, in Prisoner of Azkaban. And then he was later a Death Eater and second command to Lord Voldemort. Ron Weasley puking slugs, which of course this is the scene after Ron Weasley tries to do a trick on Draco Malfoy that backfires on him because of Ron's broken wand, and he starts puking a bunch of slugs throughout the movie. Moaning Myrtle, a glow-in-the-dark pop that was a San Diego Comic-Con 2018 shared with Hot Topic exclusive, also known as Myrtle Warren, a former student at Hogwarts who passed away years ago and is now a ghost who haunts the second floor girls' washroom. Fox, which there was a common pop, and there is also a flocked version, which was a San Diego Comic-Con 2019 shared with Hot Topic exclusive, a phoenix owned by Albus Dumbledore who has healing powers by shedding tears on human skin that has been cut. Hermione Granger as Cat, which in this scene, Hermione had created a potion that ended up backfiring on her and turned her into a cat. Tom Riddle, which there was a common version and a sepia version that was a Target exclusive, which Tom Riddle is the real name of Lord Voldemort, who appears in his younger form as he got Ginny Weasley to reopen the Chamber of Secrets. Harry Potter with the Sword of Gryffindor, which was a Hot Topic exclusive, and this is where Harry uses the Sword of Gryffindor to kill the Basilisk. And then speaking of Basilisk, the last pop we're discussing about the 6-inch Basilisk, which was a Target exclusive, a giant serpent bred by the Dark Wizards that was kept in the Chamber of Secrets for so many years.
Okay, so we'll start off obviously with Dobby, the house elf. Basically, Harry Potter hears some noise going on in his room. He goes up to check, and Dobby's kind of like just jumping around on the bed and like kind of knocking things over, which kind of gets the Dursleys a little bit kind of skeptical, or not skeptical, but kind of curious as to what's going on. This pop has Dobby holding a sock, which later on in the series, you find out that Harry kind of gives Dobby this book or whatever that was Malfoy's, but it has the sock in it. Dobby opens up, and then Dobby's like, I am a free elf, and then kind of like, protects Harry Potter afterwards. Good on Funko for making a Dobby pop for sure. Moving on to Gilderoy Lockhart. Yes, he was author. He was a former student, and then he ended up turning into one of the professors at Hogwarts. Talking about the pop, these all look pretty cool. So we've got like Gilderoy in different attires. He's got like the blue attire, which was the Barnes and Noble exclusive that you mentioned. Was he one of my favorite characters in the movie? No, I don't think so. He wasn't that amazing, I guess. I don't have a lot to say about this, honestly. Moving on to Lucius Malfoy, of course, the dad to Draco. They did really well on this pop. Obviously, this, has him with his little cane that actually, doubles as a wand as well. I think Funko did really well with this pop, just given the fact that there's, so much detail in like the jacket and the wand. And this obviously looks like Lucius Malfoy. So way to go, Funko. Ron with the bucket of slugs that he is puking up. And again, he mentioned obviously this happens to be a backfire from the broken wand. Unfortunately, I think Ron like sits on his wand or something, and he has to like tape it all up. And Draco was, I guess, like bad mouthing Hermione or something, or bad mouthing Harry even. And he went to go and say, eat slugs. And then like obviously cast the spell, backfires. Yeah. So really well done on Funko. I do love the detail. Obviously, he looks very sick and pale, obviously, and there's slugs in the bucket. Great job on Funko for this one. This one is a nice pop for sure. Moaning Myrtle. This is a nice, well done pop. Obviously, kind of accents the fact that Moaning Myrtle is now a ghost, and obviously, like you said, haunts the girls' washroom up on the second floor. And this is like the first time we meet Moaning Myrtle. This is basically, I think, around the time where like Harry, Ron, and Hermione are trying to kind of get into like the Slytherin common room and all that. And so they're trying to take like the potion that would turn them into different Slytherin students. Moaning Myrtle's a very interesting character for sure. Fox the Phoenix, the flocked one that we're looking at right now that you sent me. Really nice pop, obviously. I do have this one in my collection. And Fox, obviously, like you said, has the power of healing some injuries and wounds with the tears from its eyes that it obviously sheds. Well done on Funko for this one. This one is a nice pop for sure. I think this is one of my favorite Harry Potter pops, and I had to get it at the time, obviously, when they announced it. I just knew, like, yeah, Fox the Phoenix, had to grab it. Hermione as the cat that she kind of accidentally transforms into. She thought that she had grabbed a piece of hair from a robe that happened to be a human piece of hair, but it ended up being, I guess, a cat's hair accidentally. So her potion turned her into a cat, whereas obviously Ron and Harry turned into Crab and Goyle. Honestly, I think, yeah, Funko did pretty well. Would I have liked to see a different color eyes for these pops? I mean, maybe like yellow, because like when you're like looking at Hermione and like she's in the bathroom and she's in like the one stall and everything, and like she kind of has more or less yellowish eyes. But I mean, obviously Funko going with the route of obviously their normal pop eyes, that's fine. It's not really a big deal because obviously like Hermione's head is brown, so I guess the black eyes kind of do work with this. So not really sure if it's a gripe or if it's kind of just me nitpicking, but otherwise this pop looks really nice. Harry Potter with the Sword of Gryffindor. Actually, no. First, we'll talk about the Tom Riddle pop because I think that was one we mentioned first. I do like this scene, obviously, because this is the scene where Harry's kind of like looking at the diary and like kind of seeing like, oh, there's writing going on, like who's writing this, and it ends up being Tom Riddle, which later we find out obviously is Lord Voldemort spelled backwards, because if you take Tom and then obviously his middle name is like Marvolo and then last name Riddle, it all turns out to be like I am Lord Voldemort. Anyways, really good scene. I like the fact that it's obviously like sepia, being like the fact that it's bringing us back into the scene where Tom Riddle was a student. So it's kind of like a flashback sort of scene. And Harry finds out kind of how bad Tom Riddle really was, I suppose, and trying to get Hagrid kicked out of Hogwarts. Not much more I could say on this pop because, it just looks like a standard, Hogwarts student pop and everything of Tom Riddle, which I mean, makes sense for it to be. Really nice pop overall. Now we'll move on to the Harry Potter with the Sword of Gryffindor. This is the scene where Harry is obviously fighting the basilisk, and the sword kind of comes to him like later on throughout the fight against the basilisk. So basically, this is the scene where like Harry stabs the basilisk. Obviously, Harry kind of gets cut open with the basilisk fang being kind of like stuck in his arm a little bit and causing a wound to happen. And then later on, obviously, Fox heals Harry with the tears. Overall, this pop looks really nice. Harry just holding the sword and everything of Godric Gryffindor being like the head of Gryffindor at the time back in Godric's era of Hogwarts and everything. But this is a Hot Topic exclusive pop, which seemed pretty fitting, I guess, and a nice exclusive pop for them. And much detail, obviously. Harry's got the scar like he does on normal pops with Harry, obviously. And we'll finally talk about the basilisk that Harry ends up fighting. This pop looks really detailed, really good. I think Funko hit it out of the park. Yeah, that's where we're run off with this set of pops for the Chamber of Secrets.
Now we're going to talk about Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Book was released July 8th, 1999. The movie was released June 4th, 2004 with a budget of $130 million. Box office at $797.4 million, giving it a profit of $667.4 million. Harry Potter is having a tough time with his relatives, yet again. He runs away after using magic to inflate Uncle Vernon's sister Marge, who is being offensive towards Harry's parents. Initially scared of using magic outside of the school, he is pleasantly surprised that he won't be penalized after all. However, he soon learns that a dangerous criminal and Voldemort's trusted aide, Sirius Black, has escaped from Azkaban prison and wants to kill Harry to avenge the Dark Lord. To worsen the conditions of Harry, vile creatures called Dementors are appointed to guard the school gates and inexplicably happen to have the most horrible effect on him. Little does Harry know that by the end of the year, many holes in his past, whatever he knows of, will be filled up and he will have a clear vision of what the future has in store. Prisoner of Azkaban, I love that movie so much. Lots of cool scenes involved, including that bus ride at the beginning where it just goes a little bit skinnier. And then even like the scene when they're sitting in the train and you see that shadow of the Dementor and how it like creeps up on the window there. It's just some of the best film work I have ever seen as terms to like a movie ever. And especially Prisoner of Azkaban has a nice plot twist near the end.
Yeah, you're right. I definitely enjoyed this movie more than the first two. Like you said, obviously, like the shadow surrounding like the train, the Dementor, and the windows kind of starting to freeze up because obviously, it's getting a bit more colder with the Dementors being around and everything, and they have that kind of like lifeless form and everything to them. So, really great movie overall. So I'm excited to talk about this set of pops coming up for this book/movie.
So the 10 pops we'll talk about for Prisoner of Azkaban kicking off, we got the Dementors, a dark creature that can feed on human souls, leaving them in a vegetative state. They were used at one point to capture Sirius Black. Remus Lupin, a defense against the dark arts teacher who was close friends with Harry Potter's parents and secretly turns into a werewolf when a full moon appears. Sybil Trelawney, a professor of divination at Hogwarts and is known for making prophecies, including the return of Lord Voldemort. Neville Longbottom with the Monster Book, which Neville is a Gryffindor student at Hogwarts. And this is the scene where he opens up the Monster Book and it basically attacks him. Pretty funny scene, obviously, if you've seen Prisoner of Azkaban. The Flocked Buckbeak, which was exclusive to Hot Topic, which Buckbeak, a male hippogriff who was a pet of Hagrid, after being provoked by Draco Malfoy and attacking him, he was sentenced to death. However, Harry and Hermione managed to go back in time to help Buckbeak escape the execution. Harry Potter with Marauder's Map, which obviously the Marauder's Map is a magical document that showed a map of Hogwarts, any secret passages, and even footsteps of certain individuals. The Sirius Black with Sign Pop, that was a GameStop exclusive, a part of a Harry Potter mystery box, where there was also a 1-in-6 sepia chase in which Sirius Black, a prisoner who escaped from Azkaban, which it was believed that he wanted to kill Harry Potter. However, it was false, and that was revealed that he is the godfather of Harry Potter and was blamed for the killing of Harry's parents, even though he didn't actually betray them. Ron Weasley with Scabbers, which Scabbers is the pet rat of Ron that you see see throughout the 3 movies so far. And then Peter Pettigrew, a friend of James and Lily Potter until he joined Voldemort and got them killed. He put the blame on Sirius Black and he was sent off to Azkaban. Peter Pettigrew was transformed into a rat for many years as Ron's pet. And the last pop being the Hot Topic exclusive Remus Lupin as a werewolf.
Okay, so we'll start off with the Dementor. Yeah, this is a really nice looking pop. Looking into the detail of this, it's got like the bone structure being like skeletal and everything, and like the mouth open, and just like the head looks different than like any other pop we've seen. Good attention to detail that Funko has decided to put into this Dementor pop. Yeah, we really started out with the movie seeing like obviously, well, not start out, but like more into it in the beginning where obviously Harry, Ron, and Hermione are heading to Hogwarts. The Mentor comes. It wants to go after Harry, but then Remus Lupin ends up being on the train to Hogwarts, kind of like covered, trying to like sleep and everything, or pretending to sleep until that moment comes. Lupin helps Harry out. Moving on to the Remus Lupin pop, it's got a few kind of like scars here and there, it looks like, on its face. I think obviously because Remus Lupin has the ability to turn into a werewolf, he's been scratched before to cause those scars. I think they did really well putting attention to detail into that as well. Remus Lupin is a pretty great character overall, so good on Funko for making this into a pop. Professor Trelawney, the divinations professor, and obviously making prophecies and everything. And I remember this scene very vaguely, but also like pretty well. The pop of Professor Trelawney, they did pretty well, I'd gotta say. She's got those big round glasses and it makes her eyes look a bit bigger in movies and everything. I think this translated well into a Funko Pop form. Neville Longbottom. Probably one of my favorite comedy characters, I guess, throughout the series, because he has that monster book, and yeah, like you said earlier, it attacks him, which tries to like open it up and everything. Overall, this pop looks really nice, and you can, obviously you can tell it's a Neville pop, just how it looks and everything. I think it would have been a little bit interesting if kind of made his robe a little bit like ripped or something, if, making it seem like the book attacked him, but his kind of shirt and everything are a little bit kind of like jumbled while he's wearing it. So, it came off well regardless. So good on Funko for this. Moving on to the Buckbeak pop, the hippogriff that during the movie, there's a scene where obviously Harry gets to ride it, learn about it a bit more, and like you said, attacks Draco because Draco was kind of antagonizing it a little bit. I mean, he wasn't trying to make it attack him. He was just kind of like bad mouthing it and everything. And then, Buckbeak wasn't having it, attacked him, which caused Buckbeak to, like you said, get sent for execution. Overall, this pop looks pretty freaking nice. And the fact that they made a flocked version of it, I think that was well done on Funko's part. Harry Potter with the Marauders map. This was given to him by Fred and George. This was after I think the rest of the school went on like a trip or whatever. Harry Potter kind of stayed back. So Fred and George gave him this map so that like he can kind of see what's going on. I think this is a really nice Funko Pop that translated really well. Sirius Black with the Chase version as well. This is obviously, I'm pretty sure this was from like the newspaper, or not newspaper clipping, but like the wanted posters. Obviously, like you had mentioned, Sirius was framed for Lily and James's death, but that wasn't the case. Obviously, Sirius ends up being, like you said, Harry's godfather and wants to see Harry and like tell him of all like the bad things that have happened or are going to happen. Honestly, this is a really, really great pop. I do love the detail that they did with the sepia or the black and white chase that they did, as well as the common even. This definitely looks like a Sirius Black pop. The Ron Weasley with Scabbers. Yeah, this is another decent pop. Obviously, Ron holding Scabbers as pet mouse, who we end up finding later on near the ending of the movie that is Peter Pettigrew. I don't know. There's not a lot I can say, but like obviously Ron is kind of perplexed and like obviously finds out later on that he's kind of been holding captive to one of Lord Voldemort's assistants, so to speak. Overall, this pop looks pretty decent. There's not much detail. Peter Pettigrew. Yeah, this definitely looks like Peter Pettigrew. Obviously, Funko went along the road of making a Peter Pettigrew pup because it makes sense. As he ends up being one of those people that kind of backstab Lily and James, and ends up being one of Voldemort's assistants. And obviously, Sirius Black and Snape. Obviously, at the time, being towards the end of the Prisoner of Azkaban movie, kind of capture Pettigrew and ends up like being mad at him and also kind of like, I wouldn't say derogatory towards him, but like, they're just like saying, oh, you've been this bad person. You were the one that turned your back, yada, yada, yada. This pop looks really well, regardless. I'm getting into too much detail of everything, but that's okay. And finally, we talk about Remus Lupin as the werewolf. Obviously, he ends up fighting this like thing that goes after Ron and Harry and Hermione later on in the movie. I think he's kind of trying to protect. Or no, I think he fights Sirius Black actually, because Sirius Black turns into the werewolf, and then they get into this like huge fight thing or something for some reason. Yeah, so that's where this one comes into. Really nice detail. They got the yellow eyes. Translates very well as like a werewolf type character. Overall, a great set of pops for the Prisoner of Azkaban.
Anyways, guys, that is going to be the end of this first part of our fandom-related podcast on Harry Potter. If you enjoyed this podcast on Harry Potter, make sure you smash that like button. Comment in the comment section below and let us know what your favorite pop is from the books/movies we had discussed about on this part of the podcast. Press the subscribe button for more content like this podcast and any other videos we do on this channel in the future, and press the little bell beside it to be notified of when that future content gets released. But anyways, guys, thank you for listening to this edition of a Funko podcast, and we hope to see you guys for part 2 of You're a Wizard, the Harry Potter podcast. 1, 2, 3, I'm out of here.